welcome to Exchange Weekly. Today we start the show as usual with the education segment. Now this program, in case you just joined us for the first time, is brought to you with the compliments of Lusaka Stock Exchange, and it's Zambia's premier show on capital markets. Now after the education segment, we then go to the newsroom for the latest regards stock markets. And then also on the program we have our resident analyst talking about, among other things, African Explosives annual report for 2011, and this is no other than Joseph Lungu. And then also on the program we take time to talk to the CEO, Bankers Association of Zambia, David Chewe. These and more. Stay tuned.
Say hello to the all-new Samsung Galaxy Young, a 3G smartphone with capacitive touchscreen for precision touch interactivity. You too can now enjoy high-speed browsing, instant email access, quick office document viewing and editing, plus so much more. It's twice the hello for the Samsung Galaxy Y Pro. Why Pro? Because it's not only 3G but also comes with QWERTY keyboard and capacitive touchscreen technology for your ultimate interactive experience. Get one of these smartphones and enjoy fast downloads and access to over 100,000 apps powered by Android. Get to your nearest Azida eZone store and get yours.
Welcome back to this week's episode of Exchange Weekly's education segment. To recap our last episode, we went through how capital markets work, the origins of the Lusaka Stock Exchange, and the benefits that the Lusaka Stock Exchange has brought to Zambia. In our episode today, we shall go through a rundown of the major players of the Lusaka Stock Exchange and the role that they play in the Zambian capital market. These major players include the Lusaka Stock Exchange itself, the investor, the issuer, companies, brokers and stock market professionals, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. As we stated in the last episode, the Lusaka Stock Exchange is a system that allows savers to channel their saved funds into companies listed on the Lusaka Stock Exchange by buying units of ownership in these companies called shares. We also stated in the last episode that these shares can be bought from the company itself in an initial public offering or from other shareholders in what's called secondary trading. The Lusaka Stock Exchange functions as an intermediary body that facilitates the purchase and sale of shares and other securities such as bonds on its system. The LuSE plays two roles, one of transaction processing and the other of database facilitation. In terms of transaction processing, the LuSE facilitates the transfer of money and equities between issuers and investors in the initial public offering of a company, and also between current shareholders and potential shareholders when a person wants to sell their shares to another person in exchange for money. At the same time, the Lusaka Stock Exchange, through the Central Securities Depository, acts as a bank for shares held on the Lusaka Stock Exchange. The exchange stores the share ownership certificates in its system and keeps a record of any changes. An investor is a person who has accumulated their savings from their stream or streams of income and decides to channel them into a place where they have an opportunity to grow. In the LuSE, investors are people who have bought or want to buy shares or other securities on the Lusaka Stock Exchange. There are three types of investors that are found on a capital market. The first type are individual investors. Individual investors are simply people like me and you who want to invest their savings by purchasing shares found on the Lusaka Stock Exchange. The second type of investors are those of institutional investors. These are organizations and institutions that buy shares or other securities on the stock market. In our last episode, we mentioned NAPSA and ZISC as pension funds that buy shares on the stock market. These two are called institutional investors. The final type of investor is that of a fund. A fund is a pooling of money by a group of people that lets them invest as a group. Simply put, a fund is a team of people investing together instead of individually.
Say hello to the all-new Samsung Galaxy Young, a 3G smartphone with capacitive touchscreen for precision touch interactivity. You too can now enjoy high-speed browsing, instant email access, quick office document viewing and editing, plus so much more. It's twice the hello for the Samsung Galaxy Y Pro. Why Pro? Because it's not only 3G but also comes with QWERTY keyboard and capacitive touchscreen technology for your ultimate interactive experience. Get one of these smartphones and enjoy fast downloads and access to over 100,000 apps powered by Android. Get to your nearest Azida E-Zone store and get yours.
Welcome to the newsroom. I'm your presenter, Munyumba Mutwale. Following its first year under a new name, Real Estate Investment Zambia, formerly known as Farmers House PLC, have released their annual results for the year ending 31st March 2012. Real Estate Investment Zambia posted a very good year's results as they had a 19% increase in income, a 60% increase in operating profits, and a 137% increase in profit after tax, mainly due to the acquisition of Arcades Development PLC, which was approved in January this year. Along with other major acquisitions, along with the major acquisition of Arcades Development PLC, the company had managed to raise its asset portfolio by 77%. Zambia Sugar also had a very strong year as they managed to increase their sales in the local market, increase their shipping to the European region, and faced a favorable exchange rate regime. For the year, Zambia Sugar had reported a 316% growth in profit after tax. With these good results, they managed a year-end dividend of 9.9 kwacha per share, in comparison to the previous year's 3.55 kwacha per share. Along with Stanbic Bank, Zambia National Commercial Bank, known to many as Zanaco, was awarded Platinum-approved employer status by ACCA. Zanaco, which has been listed on the stock exchange for 4 years now, has been acknowledged with its efforts in training and development of students working towards ACCA professional scheme and certified accountant technician. That's all we have from this week's newsroom. When we return, the market analysis.
Say hello to the all-new Samsung Galaxy Young, a 3G smartphone with capacitive touchscreen for precision touch interactivity. You too can now enjoy high-speed browsing, instant email access, quick office document viewing and editing, plus so much more. It's twice the hello for the Samsung Galaxy Y Pro. Why Pro? Because it's not only 3G but also comes with QWERTY keyboard and capacitive touchscreen technology for your ultimate interactive experience. Get one of these smartphones and enjoy fast downloads and access to over 100,000 apps powered by Android. Get to your nearest Azida E-Zone store and get yours.
Exchange Weekly, and this time around we get a talk with Mr. Joseph Lungu, who is our resident analyst here, and he'll be updating us with what's going on in as far as the stock market is concerned. It's good to have you here. Good day to you.
It's great to be here.
Now let's start by looking at the numbers. How have we been doing, from last week?
Yeah. Can I just say, from the programs we've been having, I've been getting quite a number of questions, people showing and expressing interest in the stock market, which is actually very good. As you know, we have a population of 13 million people. I think just over 100,000 people are actively trading, or 100,000 accounts actively trading directly on the stock market. So there's still a huge population who are still to enjoy the benefits of the stock market. So we're hoping that, with this program, at least people may show interest, may become more aware of what the potential is for the stock market, and they can become actively involved.
And just as well, you've mentioned that, because people have been asking me as well that, it's not possible that I just buy shares and I sit there and my money is growing. Can you explain, how that is done?
It's very possible. I mean, we have had clients who actually started investing years ago. One particular client, obviously I can't name them, they put in 5 million kwacha to buy shares of Lafarge. And those shares, over a period of time, they grew to almost 500 million. So you can see, when they were buying the shares were at almost 60 kwacha per share. Over a period of time, those shares are worth more than 7,000 kwacha per share. So there's that huge potential which you can't get anywhere. You can't get in a bank account, you can't get in property, but you can definitely get in shares. So, just tell your viewers to get on board, contact a broker, open an account and start buying shares. Big opportunities.
Another question that keeps coming up is, if I put in my shares, or I buy shares, when can I actually be allowed to, rip off from what I've put in?
The decision is actually yours. When you buy shares, no one will stop you from selling them a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month's time. But hopefully, we hope that when you buy the shares, you're looking at the long term, medium to long term. The reason why we say that is because if you are only looking at the short term, you may actually not enjoy the full benefits of owning those shares, because actually shares, they do take some time to actually grow in value. People who have invested for at least a year, 2 years, or even longer are the ones who have gotten the greatest benefit from investing in shares. But like I said, we won't stop anyone from selling the shares. The decision is ultimately yours. Okay,
I was just looking at the African Explosives Limited. They've just released their annual report for 2011. Update us on what is...
African Explosives, I'll get to them, but I didn't mention how the market performed actually last week.
Okay.
Yes, as you're aware, there were dark storms that formed in Europe. Like I mentioned in the program last week, the issue with the debt crisis in Europe. The equity markets globally were actually affected, but there was one bright spot. It happened to be the Lusaka Stock Exchange. We actually managed to go up a bit. The Lusaka Stock Exchange, as measured by the LuSE All-Share Index, was actually up to 3,873, a gain of 0.13%. And what was good as well was that the volumes, the turnover, and the number of trades actually increased from the previous week. The volume was up 56% to 32 million shares. The turnover was actually north of 3 billion kwacha, up 126%, which was a substantial gain. And the number of trades was 113, up 23%. The best performer of the week was CEC Copperbelt Energy Corporation, which was up 6% to close at 690 kwacha. In fact, the shares themselves for CEC actually had an interesting week. It was actually quite a roller coaster week for them, because on Wednesday they were up 6.15%. On Thursday, they were down 6.09%. And then on Friday, they were up 6.48%. So it was pretty volatile. But the ones who actually had shares the previous week, they made quite a nice gain, almost 6%. The worst performer, which is a stock that we'll talk about, was actually African Explosives. It was down a hefty 16.7% to close at 3,000 kwacha. So it was a pretty interesting week, but the LuSE actually did well. Okay, so the world market doesn't necessarily have a direct effect on shares or how the performance of the stock market in a particular country. Well, they do, but that's the reason why it's always a good idea to look at all the different markets, because they actually don't behave the same. We need to look at how there's a word that they say, correlation, how markets correlate. The thing about the LuSE, it has actually been a bit different from the other markets. When the other markets have been going down, it has held up pretty well. And that's exactly what happened last week. Most of the global markets were actually down, but the LuSE held steady. So if one wanted to have a global portfolio of shares, if you wanted to invest in other countries, the LuSE should be a very important component of that portfolio, because it will protect you. When the storms are gathering, you'll be able to at least have a steady portfolio if you included shares from the LuSE.
Okay, let's talk about the African explosives.
Yeah, African Explosives. First, a bit about the company. They actually manufacture and they supply commercial explosives to the mining, quarrying, and construction industry. They were founded in 1963. They listed on the Lusaka Stock Exchange in 2006. They have 20.4 million shares in issue. 80% of those shares are held by their parent company, AEL, South Africa. The remaining 4 million shares are tightly held by mostly local institutions and individuals. They are headquartered in Mufulira, in the heart of the Copper Belt. Most of their major customers are the major mining and quarrying operations in the country. But what they do as well is they export to the DRC, to Malawi and Tanzania. As for the way they performed last year, 2011, their revenue was up 20% to 357.8 billion kwacha compared to the previous year. The profit from operations was up 25% to 21 billion, and they paid a nice dividend, 110 kwacha per share, which translates to a dividend yield of just less than 3%. The previous year they paid a dividend of 93 kwacha per share. As for their future outlook, what they said in a statement was that short to medium term it's favorable, as they see copper demand outstripping supply, and since they have also fully commissioned the major capital projects, the projects that they started embarking on in 2007, they are now focusing on fully optimizing those projects and seeing how the return on investments will be based on that. Maybe the only worry in the near future is the fact that the copper output in Zambia has gone down a bit. I mean, last year it was down about 3.6% to 740,000 tons. I mean, obviously the business depends on copper production. So if there's a reduction, there's a bit of worry there. And also the slowdown in the Chinese economy. China is the largest buyer of copper. So if there's a slowdown in the economy, that's a bit of a worry. But all in all, I think they did pretty well. As for the share price, which the viewers are interested in, like I mentioned, for the week it was down. For the year, it's down about 25%. But then if you look at the 2-year period of time, which I think is a safe enough period to look at, it's been up almost 200%.
Okay.
Yeah, so somebody who invested 10 million in June 2010 will be looking at something like 30 million.
Which isn't bad.
Which isn't bad, which is remarkable actually.
Yeah. Okay, we end in the interview. We have to end traditionally on the tip for the week.
Yeah, tip for the week. You remember last time we asked 5 questions. First question: how much do you wish to invest? How long do you wish to invest? Why are you investing? What kind of returns are you looking for? And what kind of losses are you prepared to accept? Now, what I've done is I've looked at the sort of typical clients that come through to our office, and I've looked at the typical individual, somebody who has maybe 10 million to invest, who's looking to invest for about 2 years, who's looking for above average returns, obviously beating inflation and beating maybe the LuSE or share index, somebody who's looking for losses not more than 30% on their portfolio. So such a person, how can they go about investing that 10 million? Like I mentioned the other week, we need to look at 2 things, risk and returns. Obviously we need to reduce the risk in the portfolio, and we need to maximize the returns that they get. How do you reduce the risk? 3 ways. You can actually diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, as they say. So for the 10 million, you can allocate 2 million in 5 different companies, which I'll mention very soon. And then what you need to look at is also the liquidity of the stocks that you want to buy. You want to buy shares that you can easily buy and you can easily sell. You don't want to buy stocks which, when it comes time to sell, you're not able to do that.
But stockbrokers will let you know.
Stockbrokers will let you know. I mean, there are 21 companies that are listed on the LuSE. Some companies are fairly liquid, others not so liquid. So we want to choose companies that are liquid. And then, of course, like I said, we need to measure how risky a stock is. There are many ways of doing that. There's one popular way that people can do that. That's calculating what's known as a standard deviation. It's just a statistical measure of calculating the riskiness of a stock. So I've done that for this particular analysis. Like I mentioned, that if a stock actually moves up and down very much, it's not really a good idea to own that stock. You need a stock which is actually stable in its movements. You want to sleep well at night. You don't want to start worrying like what's going to happen to my portfolio. And then, of course, when we come to look at return, we can look at the historical performance of a stock. Okay, we can look at a 5-year period or even a 2-year period. Look at the stocks that have outperformed the general market. And then, of course, finally we can look at those that pay very good dividends. Okay, so having done that, I've selected 5 stocks which I can recommend for your viewers to look at. These 5 stocks are CEC, Copper Belt Energy Corporation, which, like I mentioned, was the top performer last week, Zanaco, Standard Chartered Bank, Puma Energy, Lafarge. In terms of returns, CEC 38% over the last 2 years. Zanaco has returned 122% over the last 2 years. Standard Chartered Bank 98% over the last 2 years. Puma 290% over the last 2 years, which is remarkable. And then Lafarge 34%. So these are very good stocks. Mr.
Lungu, we have to end, but we need just to re-emphasize on those tips even next week.
Indeed, that's our role as brokers.
Thanks a lot, and let's meet next week.
Indeed, let's do that.
Okay, you're still watching Exchange Weekly. We'll be right back.
Say hello to the all-new Samsung Galaxy Young, a 3G smartphone with capacitive touchscreen for precision touch interactivity. You too can now enjoy high-speed browsing, instant email access, quick office document viewing and editing, plus so much more. It's twice the hello for the Samsung Galaxy Y Pro. Y Pro, because it's not only 3G but also comes with QWERTY keyboard and capacitive touchscreen technology for your ultimate interactive experience. Get one of these smartphones and enjoy fast downloads and access to over 100,000 apps powered by Android. Get to your nearest Azida eZone store and get yours.
Right now we're joined by Mr. David Chewe, who is Chief Executive Officer with Bankers Association of Zambia, and we get to find out what's going on in the banking sector. It's good to have you here. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you, Konda. Good day.
Now, a lot has happened in the recent past regards the banking industry. Just tell us how banks are coping. There's been the rebasing of the kwacha, there's been the recapitalization, just a number of developments taking place.
Yes. The first quarter of this year and even this second quarter has been quite challenging for the banks because there are major changes that are happening in the industry. When you look at the introduction of the BOS policy rate, this is one of the pieces of initiatives that were aimed at helping to develop a transparent process for the transfer of government policy as it relates to credit extension in the economy and containing inflation. And in that regard, there have been a lot of works as banks were required to work with their customers to change the pricing of their loans and advances. And we've subsequently seen that now banks are no longer using a base rate to compute lending rates. Instead, they're using the policy rate. And this came into effect from 2nd April. And as we speak, all the banks now are complying with that requirement. The second bit relating to the rebasing of the kwacha, as you can imagine, this is a big piece of work because now banks have to change their systems so as to comply with the new requirement. We are now going to have to deal with coins. in the recent past, we've not dealt with coins, so banks have to come up with new ways of ensuring that they service the customers. And the process of just moving from the current currency to the new rebased currency also requires a lot of public awareness. In addition, there are technical issues that banks will have to deal with, and there are huge costs that are involved that banks will have to cope with. Then, as if that's not enough, we have to deal with the recapitalization, which is a big piece of work again, because it's also calling for banks to refocus. They have to relook at how they are going to meet the requirements of both the Bank of Zambia and the requirements of the customers. So there's been some significant transformation in the industry, and the banks are really under a lot of immense pressure.
Yeah, I realize that for a number of customers this is great news, because you are sure that the bank will not close down, and there's just a lot of confidence on the part of the customers. But can the bank say anything good about some of these demands that have been made of them?
Of course, the banks are very excited, despite the challenges that this whole episode is going to bring to them. They are also excited because it also brings in the sort of, if you like, the realization that banks have got a critical role to play in the economy, and from that perspective, they have to really, be up to speed and meet the requirements of the various stakeholder groups. Of course, there will be talk about whether or not this is the right move and but on balance, everyone feels that these are things that should be supported.
Okay, now the jump, obviously, in regards to recapitalization was very high.
Yes.
How are you seeing banks? Do you think they'll manage this, and is it something feasible?
I think, Kunda, the best way to look at this recapitalization is first to look at the banking sector as it is currently. We've got basically international banks, then we've got regional banks and local banks. And the recapitalization proposal or directive from the Bank of Zambia is basically covering two aspects. Local banks have got a lower threshold of $20 million. And then international banks or foreign banks have to meet the $100 million requirement. So it therefore follows that even when we look at how banks are coping, we have to look at it from that perspective. The local banks have got a lower requirement, and therefore obviously in terms of the pressure is lower than if you look at the foreign bank, whose threshold is going to now move from the common, is it 2 billion kwacha that we saw, to now 100 billion for locals, and then in excess of 500 billion for the foreign banks. It's a tall order, and these are the pressure points that it's bringing into the banking system at the moment.
Okay, now I want you to talk about the listing of banks, something great that has taken place too so far, and as a result of these two, do you think we will have more banks listed? How are you looking at the scenario?
I guess what is very, again, of note is the fact that these banks, it's the shareholders that have to make a decision. Part of the expectation when you have a recapitalization exercise is that the various shareholders, institutions would actually look at the various options, and the stock market is one area that the banks would consider to raise capital. Others will straight go to their shareholders and they'll get money. Others will they will issue debt instruments. So there are basically three sort of opportunities that we see. And if we look at the use of the local stock market, one of the issues that we need to be aware of is does the market have capacity to sort of provide the support that some banks might require? I think that's one of the challenges that we have to deal with in relation to the stock exchange. On the other hand, the shareholders who want to continue to thrive, because Zambia has got huge potential, so they would have to look for money from wherever they can find it so as to bring it into the market. But it's our desire as the banking association to see to it that all the banks are recapitalized and they meet the requirements of the Bank of Zambia. Okay,
I want you to break it down to the viewers. What does it mean for potential shareholders or for the Zambians if banks are listed?
I think the starting point is first with banks being listed, it promotes a lot more transparency in terms of the shareholding structure will also be broadened, and ultimately you begin to see a lot more capital being in the market, and that in itself means that the banks can take additional risk, and if they take additional risk, it means that business community will benefit, because a number of those that currently may not be accessing credit might actually find that they get credit. The other side of the recapitalization is the fact that a number of banks whose programs of expanding their footprint or branch network was such that maybe it would take another 5 years, they would accelerate that, they will bring it forward. So that's one of the benefits that we are likely to see through this recapitalization.
Okay, please re-emphasize on what kind of changes people should look out for, the customers should look out for, with all these policy changes that have taken place in the banking sector.
I guess if I go to the policy rate, the key message there is that now customers have an understanding that if the policy rate was set by the Bank of Zambia, currently it's 9%, when they go to their bank and they are looking for credit, they should know that their loan or advance will be priced off that policy rate. So there is some element of transparency, and when people are talking about high rates and they're like, at least they have a reference point which they can use to compare. So it gives them at least a basis for comparison. On the rebasing of the currency, notwithstanding the costs that the banks are going to incur, both in terms of publicity and also the technical side of things, there is the aspect of the opportunity that it presents, and the opportunity that we see is related to more innovation, because now banks can bring in the vending machines and all the other things which we currently don't see, but in other countries we see that, and that reduces the current limitations of limited time that the public have to access certain services, and that we welcome. When we look at the recapitalization, of course the benefit that we hope to see is the highly capitalized banks means that it gives confidence to the investors, and we see more investment coming into the country. It also presents an opportunity for broadened shareholding, because some banks would list, and then those that look to invest in banks can buy shares of the stock market. The other side of things is that because now banks are highly capitalized, then they will take more, they will lend more, and as they lend more, that helps this economy to grow bigger. I think those are the key benefits that I see.
So the kwacha will still remain, it will still have its strength even when the rebasing takes place.
I think we should not sort of confuse rebasing with the strength of the kwacha, because the strength of the kwacha is directly driven by our ability to remain competitive. How much are we exporting? Have we really reached a stage where we are competitive in terms of ensuring that the value...
The same factors that account for the kwacha now will be the same factors that...
Yes, because what will make the kwacha really strong, if that's what you're looking for, is more around enhancing more of our exports, because currently we still have issues around challenges of inflationary pressures and all those things that cause our currency to depreciate. Yes, so I wouldn't necessarily link rebasing with the strength of the kwacha. Yes.
Mr. Chewe, unless there's anything else?
No, for me it's just to encourage the viewers out there that we are going through challenging times as the banking industry, and the banks are really geared to ensure that they provide enough information to the public. We'll be going out to the public to share with them information, especially as it relates to rebasing of the currency, as and when we get it. As we speak, the Bank of Zambia, who is the authority for issuance of currency, are going through the procurement. Once they give us information, then we'll start informing the public about that. With regard to the policy rate, as I earlier on indicated, we encourage the public to ensure that they benefit from this transparency that's happening. And the other thing that we currently are working on, ensuring that we give enough information to the public, and we hope that the public will see the commitments of the banking industry to drive the economy forward and contribute to the positive developments that are happening in the country.
Mr. Chewe, it's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good day.
Well, on that note, we come to the end of today's edition of Exchange Weekly. Make sure you join us next week at the same time.